Is Jalen Hurts talking to my dad at night after practice? Fatigue makes cowards of us all, Hurts told reporters. I heard that since I was 7 years old. Control what you can. Control what you can control. It's like we got a lot in common. Our dads have a lot in common or something because, like, I've heard all these quotes. The other quote, and the most important quote as it pertains to the NFC East this year, is this one. I've moved on to the new year. It's as simple as that. It's that simple, fellas. It's that simple in the NFC East because anything can happen. The Eagles had an incredible year last year. I mean, it was one of the best football teams that I've seen play in the past 25 years, right? Since I've been an adult capable of analyzing the game of football at a level north of like a high school football player that likes to watch on Sundays. Like, I can't tell you how good the teams in the 90s were. I haven't gone back and looked at them head to head against the Eagles in 2024, but that's one of the best teams this century, if not, in my opinion, like on paper, you could make a case for being the best team this century, talent-wise.
No doubt.
Okay. I mean, just talent. I'm talking about positional talent. There's going to be people that say, well, Tom Brady's better than Jalen Hurts, so you got to give the nod to this Patriots team or, prime Aaron Rodgers or that sort of thing. Like, but I just mean the roster, top to bottom, was incredible. All right. And Jalen Hurts said it. It's a new year. So you can't carry that year over into this year. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but hearing Landon Dickerson get up there at a press conference and say, hey, that team doesn't exist anymore, right? Like, that's the realization when you're trying to defend a title. There might be some of the same people, but the team has changed. I mean, that team's got to replace Becton, BG, Sweat, Milton Williams, Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. It's a lot of good players, right? There's a lot of new faces that they're going to depend on. And the way teams prepare for this Eagles team is going to be different, whether you like it or not, from the way people prepare for them last year. They've had an entire offseason to study that group, what they did last year. And heavy as the head that wears a crown. You're going to get every team's best. There's a lot of cliches that are bullshit in sports. That is one of them that is not bullshit. When you are the lead dog, people are going to hunt you. So this year is going to be different no matter what the outcome is. It is a new football team that starts from zero. They don't pick up where they left off. And I love the fact that a lot of the Eagles are talking that way because defending a title is hard. We tried to do it in 2018. It's one of the only reasons I came back in 2018 and didn't retire and start doing this a year earlier was because I didn't want to get FOMO if that team won a Super Bowl. And let me tell you, that was jarring. I had been on a Super Bowl team prior with the Patriots in 2016. I was on a Super Bowl team in 2017 with the Eagles. But defending a title only made me appreciate what New England did over those years even more so because we started 4-6. And all the cliches about people getting fat and happy and about people not doing the same things that got them there the year prior are true. And all the cliches about how hard people play when they play you are true. We went down to Tampa Bay in the opener, and I swear I heard the fucking cannon go off for 3 hours. It was 100 degrees. They were ready to play. So, it's going to be a challenge. They've said all the right things, but with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2025, as it will be with the NFC East in 2025, we don't know what's going to happen. All right? And there's some good football teams in this division. The Commanders are going to make a lot of noise, right? They've got some success to build on. You have the Giants, who have got some really, really strong position groups. We're going to talk about them. They're going to present challenges to different teams at different points in the season. I don't know if they're there yet. A lot of questions at quarterback. The Cowboys have some real strengths, as much as you might not like to say it, right? But to me, we have to start this preview, even though it is a new year, with the 2025 Eagles, the team that's defending the Super Bowl and the NFCs. By the way, this division may not be decided until the very end of the thing. And the NFL scheduled it this way for a reason. You're going to get DC and Philly twice in the last 3 weeks. All right, that's the thing of beauty. And for coaches in the NFL that like to say, hey, everything that we want to do is ahead of us at various points in an NFL season, as in all our goals are still attainable. If you're Dan Quinn, as long as the bottom doesn't fall out, and as long as the Eagles aren't 15-1 going into the final week of the season, chances are everything still in front of us will be true. And for fans and people wondering what's going to happen in the division, the uncertainty will remain right there until December. And that's the way we like it. So let's get on with it. How do you respond? That's kind of what it boils down to for me with the Eagles, right? We can talk about scheme. We'll talk about players here shortly. But how do you respond to being on top, to the ring ceremony, to the parade, to the media engagements, to the off-the-field money, to key players leaving position groups on your team, and now handing the keys over to younger players, right? Younger players now have to lead. It is a young team. There are young players in important spots on this team, right? The Commanders, we'll talk about them in a second. They're sneaky, one of the oldest teams in the league. It's about having experience, and it's about having experience in the right spots. And the Eagles have that offensively. 10 out of 11 starters coming back. That's huge, right? Like I named all the names and faces that have moved on, right? Becton, BG, Sweat, Milton Williams, Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. You know, you lost leaders like Brandon Graham. You lost dynamic players who went and got the bag in Milton Williams. You lost important positions like Darius Slay. You know, there's going to be some shaking out at corner to be done. And then there's some losses like the Mekhi Becton loss, which is not taking anything away from Mekhi Becton, but if you're going to lose somebody anywhere, how about on an offensive line where the replacement actually got some action last year in his stead, and the other four guys can afford to help the right guard, right? You're talking about guys. The bulk of that offensive line is on an extension, right? We'll start in the middle with Juergens, who seamlessly transitioned after the Kelsey era, and we all wondered how that was going to be, and he played great. You have Dickerson at left guard. You've got Mailata at left tackle. Everybody knows the story with him. He's turned into a premier tackle in the game. And at right tackle, you've got Lane Johnson, who, in my opinion, is the best guy on the planet when it comes to protecting the passer at right tackle. And obviously, traditionally, we talk about left tackle as being, you know, the gold standard, but the game's changed. A lot of the best tackles are on either side. A lot of the best rushers are on either side. And they're going to be tasked with continuing to make kings. By that, I mean, this group has been a king-making group, dude. Every fucking coordinator that has, well, pretty much every coordinator. It feels like somebody gets paid from this team every year positionally. It feels like a coordinator moves on, become a head coach. Steichen, Kellen Moore, that sort of thing. You got running backs who have left the building and gotten the bag, and it hasn't been the same, you know, like a Miles Sanders type thing. And everybody's enjoyed success because of, not only because of, but this position group right here, the offensive line, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. What they've been from 2017 when we won a title all the way to 2025, it's been nothing short of spectacular. And they've been able to change out certain positions along the way. Obviously, Jeff Stoutland, one of the best coaches in the game, if not the best offensive line coach in the game. So offensive line shouldn't be a problem. Steen and Green are going to compete at right guard. Obviously, Kenyon Green coming from Houston, kind of an embattled player as of late, coming from an embattled group. Maybe it wasn't all him in Houston. Maybe he's going to provide quality depth. Maybe he wins the competition, but I doubt it. I think Steen's probably the guy. I think that's where you got to help out from time to time, right? Good thing is you can leave the other guys alone. We talked about this. And, you know, offensively, in total, thinking about an offense that ran the Chiefs out of the building and put up like high school basketball numbers, on Washington 2 weeks prior to finish their season. You're telling me this group's returning 10 starters. It could be scary. I think a lot of it comes down to the quarterback play, right? In the same way that we're talking about, hey, it's a new year for the team. It's a new year for Jalen Hurts, who at various points last year, people are calling for his head. At various points over the past couple of years, people are calling for his head. But when it comes time for the playoffs, he plays his best ball. And now we're talking about him, rightfully so, in an echelon of quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls, guys that have won MVPs. He hasn't won an MVP, but he was damn close a couple years ago, right? He's stacking up a resume where I wouldn't put him in that capital E elite category. By that, I mean the big four, right? The big four is kind of the big four to me. You can hate me. Big four is the big four. But I put Jalen Hurts right outside that group. And at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. If you win games when it matters, it doesn't matter individually where people place you in a hierarchy of players. Isn't this about winning? He's a winner. But what you want to see is this offense avoid the spells, right? The turnover spells, the sloppy spells, and the spells where, quite frankly, it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of the offense if the quarterback doesn't look his best. I think he's capable of having his very best year. The confidence that this past season probably translates to between the years with Jalen Hurts. You never know. And Patullo's been there. You talk about coordinators. Jalen Hurts has had a different coordinator every season, basically, of his career. That's a testament to his ability to adapt, to be malleable. Mm-hmm. And I know the scheme, ideally, is not going to change that much, right? Your job is to not fuck it up if you're Patullo. But this is a guy that's had a close relationship with Jalen Hurts, has been in the building for a lot of years. So in a sense, it's business as usual for this offense, and that's a good thing. Here are the places that I might worry about the offense. I'm getting a little nitpicky here. Running back depth is an interesting one for me. We talked about the right guard spot. That could be a problem here and there. But, a lot of teams would wish to have that problem, right? A right guard blemish among that group up front. And then you talk about the running back depth. I mean, Saquon Barkley had one of the best seasons the running backs ever had last year. And along the way, amassed 482 touches. Okay? That's the most since DeMarco Murray in 2014, by my research. He had 497 touches. Eddie George in 2000, he had 488. Okay, and ESPN made the point that every running back who's accumulated more than 400 touches in a season since 2000 has failed to repeat his production the following season, and most haven't come close. This makes A.J. Dillon and Shipley potentially very important to this offense, especially considering you want to pace Jalen. He had 150 carries last year. He's been over 100 carries pretty much every year of his career. I don't know if there was a single year where he didn't have 100 carries. And at times, think about the Luvu hit, shit like that. I think some of his regular season dips in production and some of the games where you're like, is this the same guy that looks the way he looks on the biggest stage? Like, I think some of that could be attributed to being dinged here and there because he does carry the football a lot. Sometimes players know, fans might not know this, but something that doesn't make the injury report can still be a massive burden on a guy who's supposed to throw the football with accuracy, with placement, with touch. If a guy's dealing with a rib, a shoulder, something like that we don't necessarily have access to that knowledge, he's carrying the ball 5-10 times a game, something like that. He's taking some big hits in the open field. They've got to avoid that, and when to come back to Saquon Barkley, which is basically he's the straw that stirs the drink, right? Not so fast. It's also Jalen, and it's the run game. You look back to last year with the Commanders, in that game where Jalen got hurt, the Luvu hit, Saquon got bottled up after that point, relatively speaking. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a quarterback run system takes a lot off the edge players. There are guys at the second level whose eyes are occupied. There's a lot that goes on because the quarterback has a threat to run the ball. If he's out of the game and Tanner McKee's in the game, things change a little bit. It's a little bit easier, to put it in simple terms, to key on Saquon Barkley. But going back to the Saquon Barkley 482 touches last year, I mentioned DeMarco Murray with 497 in 2014. I mentioned Eddie George in 2000. Both players followed those years with the lowest yards per carry and the lowest yards per game in their careers to that point. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm not saying Saquon is going to have a major dip in production, but he is only human. And coming into last season, there were questions about, hey, he's had injuries in the past. He's a running back, yada, yada, yada. Well, he made that all look foolish last year, but that doesn't mean that in 2025, a new year, he might be a little fatigued out of the gate. They might have to spell him a little bit at different points of the season. And Patullo's talked about that. It's kind of a pitch count thing, situational thing.
And just to add to this, Chris, AJ Dillon, who they're going to be relying on, missed last year with a neck injury. So you're not
That's right.
totally sure how healthy he'll be as far as being ready for a full season. And then you mentioned Will Shipley. It's been primarily a special teams role for him thus far in his career in Philly. So one of those guys got to step up for the Kenny Gainwell void as he's off to Pittsburgh.
No question. No question. I mean, and when you talk about depth, you talk about depth at running back, you talk about Dillon's injury history. Let's say Jalen's got to miss a game or two here or there. And I talked about how important he is to not only the passing game, but also the run game. Tanner McKee's a guy that everybody loves there. You bring up Tanner McKee in Eagle circles, they love this guy. They think he can really play. So at some point, if we have to see Tanner McKee, I think it'll be an interesting deal. Kenny Pickett was able to pull a couple rabbits out of his hat last year, I believe, in situations where we didn't expect to see him. So this is a very good football team. They can elevate people. This offensive line can elevate people. This run game can elevate people. But it's important to note some of the depth issues. You can't have everything, I guess. I mean, you get to defense. I think they're kind of throwing the kitchen sink at the pass rush thing, right? At the edge rush thing. They're replacing a lot of bodies. We talked about that. I think a lot's going to be made out of who's the guy who's getting sacks, who's the guy who's getting home. I don't just mean who's going to be the edge rusher opposite Nolan Smith. I mean who's going to be the edge setter, who's going to be the disruptor, who's going to be the guy that plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. If you watch Josh Sweat play, one thing I thought he did a really good job of as his career progressed is he played on the other side of the line of scrimmage, even in the run game, right? And BG, he had a different way of doing it, but he did it. He'd backdoor a lot of stuff. He'd take some liberties, and he'd be back there a lot of TFLs, that sort of thing. These two guys, they were present in the backfield with regularity. I know Nolan Smith can play that way. I love the way he plays. And with the strength gains he made last year, I expect him to be even better this year, right? I mean, I look back to that playoff game, him meeting a counter behind the center's earlobe and blowing up. Who was it? Elton Jenkins?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember, but I heard it in the press box. I love Nolan Smith. And somebody opposite him has to play with the same hunger and, quite frankly, just ass-kicking fucking attitude on first and second down as well. Who's that going to be? They kind of threw the kitchen sink at this whole thing. You got Uche, you got Ojulari, you got Okoronkwo, you got Hunt, who's a familiar face who had a really good Super Bowl. I expect growing pains in pass rush. Remember last year when in the Atlanta game when everybody said this is the worst D-line ever. They said as Kirk Cousins marched up and down the field in 2 minutes, they said this is the worst D-line ever. What they didn't know is that rush and coverage go hand in hand, and it takes time for people to get on the same page, and that there was this little white kid from Iowa that they had to put in the game, and he was going to change everything. They didn't know that yet. But just to show you how much things can progress throughout a year in the NFL, that's what happened. So we look at this same situation. It looks like a collection of names. Somebody has to step up, right? And they threw the kitchen sink at it, as I mentioned. Ajomo inside. I expect him to step up. I think he will. I think he's going to be the next in a long line of guys, hopefully a long line of guys that enjoy playing next to Jalen Carter, right? And get in the bag. Not take anything away from Milton Williams. I think he's fantastic. I think he deserves the money. but you're not going to get the money not playing next to a guy like Jalen Carter. I hope in a year we're talking about how do we keep a Jomo in the future because he's pretty good. They didn't have to blitz much last year. I'd like to keep it that way if I'm the Eagles, right? And a lot of that comes with this group finding their groove. Listen, the investment in the linebacker room is like a new look for the Eagles. The last era of Eagles football, including in this greater Howie Roseman era, we didn't pay running backs, didn't invest in running backs. When I say we, they didn't invest in running backs, they didn't invest in linebackers, right? This was like a running joke almost. And it wasn't a joke necessarily, but it was just like something we can get by without doing. Well, they just paid Zach Bond a lot of money. And on top of that, they spend a high draft pick on Jihad Campbell, who to me is kind of a swing player for this defense.
Yep.
Call me crazy, but doesn't he look like he can rush the edge?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's on the tape.
It's on tape. So to me, this guy, he's not going to just help you at off-ball linebacker. He's going to be part of the front at times if he can play. And I think if Fangio can get him where he wants to be, it's nice. You got Nakobe Dean, who's obviously coming off an injury and that sort of thing. But this guy has got a lot of talent, and they spent a high pick on him, and he is technically an off-ball backer. It makes me think, though, that they have other ideas of how they're going to use him in different situations, and need might necessitate that, right? So we look at the linebackers, that's what you got. In the secondary, the way to look at this is there are questions. And right now, Makuba, the Texas safety, who's going to play, if he plays safety with the ones next to Reed Blankenship. Reed Blankenship has that one spot locked down. He's got a shoulder. So we're looking at Cooper DeJean and a lot of packages of safety in camp. I think ultimately what it comes down to is who is Fangio more afraid to trot out there? The second safety or the third corner? Meaning Cooper DeJean, who can play corner or safety, will grease the squeaky wheel. Wherever that squeaky wheel is, that's where he should show up, in my opinion. If you've got a problem at corner and it's bigger than the problem you have at safety, at that safety spot, then DeJean's going to go play corner. And that's the positional flexibility that he brings to the table that really just what a luxury that is. And he can also play nickel, and I expect him to play in the slot. So we've seen that. So I personally, if Cooper DeJean can play outside, I'd rather see a safety that you got concerns about than a corner. That's just me. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. This is potentially a pretty good defense. Of course, we didn't see what happened last year coming. And Vic's thinking he can do the same thing with some different faces, I'm sure. I don't know if he knew how special that group was going to be at the start of last season. And Vic's shown the ability to coach up young players. You talk about guys in Miami didn't like Vic Fangio. Well, obviously it wasn't a him problem. And there's a lot of young guys on this group. You talk about youth, man, putting a bow on the Eagles, and we spent a little more time on the Eagles than we will on some of the other teams in the NFC East because they've earned that right, at least the 2024 Eagles did. This is the second youngest team in the NFL. On defense, they have one player over 30 on the current 90-man roster. So when you talk about having to defend a title and some of the pitfalls, you can look at it one of two ways. Like, fuck, this is a young team. They're going to have a lot of challenges. Can they really be mature enough to handle this responsibility? Or you ever heard of somebody being too young to know? Like, maybe they're too young to feel it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they're just so young that they don't realize the gravity of the situation. They're just going to cruise through it because they are so fucking young. There's two schools of thought here, but I think the one thing they have is a very senior leader in the way of Vic Fangio, who's seen it all, who's not going to kiss your ass. And he's probably the perfect coordinator to defend a title under because he is not in a good mood. I'm pretty sure that that Eagles Super Bowl lasted about a week for him, and then he was moved on to the next thing. He's a pretty gruff individual. Big Fangio. I ate lunch with him at the Nova Care Center. Just want to remind people about my experience eating lunch with Big Fangio. He was perfectly cool. But when it was time, like, he just Irish goodbye'd the lunch table. He just got up and left. He wasn't like, all right, see you guys later. He just got up and left. Like, he's all ball. He's all business. So let's move on. The commies deserve a lot of attention this year. They earned it last year. Listen, we're going to see a lot of these guys. 8 standalone TV games, 5 in prime time. I'm not mad at it because I think the quarterback's special. I think it's going to be fun. I think a lot of people are praying for his downfall in year 2. I think a lot of people are looking for that year 2 slump. We just saw one with CJ Stroud, right? The reason I don't worry as much about the slump, and there's one big caveat, which I'm about to bring up in a moment, that I think shapes the entire thing, is he really avoided the turnover-worthy plays last year. It's one of my favorite things about him. Like, he played quarterback like he was 30 years old in some situations, right? He just had that air about him, but also in the outcomes, he wasn't putting the ball in harm's way. So if you're not a guy that puts the ball in harm's way, and the offensive line has improved, which I think it has, at least in investment, Laramie Tunsil bringing him into the building at left tackle. Connor Lee's the right tackle that they spent a high draft pick on, right? Cosme,
Yep.
who's probably dealing with an injury that's a 9-month timeline from the time it happened, is a
ACL.
late September, early October guy, hopefully. Dan Quinn thinks he might be ahead of schedule. He sounds optimistic, but let's say he doesn't come back. I still think the floor is high. Coleman, who was a rookie last year for TCU, did a really good job filling in a tackle. He can play inside. Wiley, right? Like, so it doesn't feel like, to me, it'd be like if Houston had gone out this year and spent resources on the offensive line, it would be because it was a fucking fire. Like, there's a fire in the house. There really wasn't a fire last year. And this quarterback was cool and calm through the whole thing, and they improved their offensive line. Now, there's 2 things that make me worry about maybe a regression in the second year, which would be Cliff Kingsbury's scheme getting stale. Like, that was a huge narrative, if you will, like, where it was like, hey, it was week 8, week 9, and we were waiting for the shoe to drop with Cliff Kingsbury, as it has in the past, right? Like, his teams seem to trail off late in the season. People figure his deal out, whatever. It really didn't work that way. It's almost like having a quarterback like that really helps. However, when you've got an entire offseason to see how these guys get to their quick game, to see patterns and, which half of the field this guy's working, to see his tendencies, like, you have more time naturally for the rest of the league to kind of study the sum of your work. Where last year you're prepping for Jayden Daniels, you got 5 days.
Right.
Some guys are in the building are scouting a couple weeks out, but like, as far as the people who are designing defenses and calling the shots, this is the first good long look they've had at Kingsbury and Daniels. So there is a chance that in year 2, people figured Cliff out a little bit. I always think that's a curious thing, because when people are like, I think they figured this quarterback out or figured this offensive coordinator out, I'm like, well, what do you mean? And then usually they don't know what to say. What does that mean, figure a guy out? I do think there's a chance, though, that with more tape, there's more answers.
And what can help the Commanders protect against that is adding a skill set at receiver that is very different than what they had in Debo.
No, I mean, Debo's going to help a lot. I think Debo's going to help in a couple ways. And by the way, I hear Dan Quinn really likes Debo. The thing I wanted to say, which was, none of this matters if they can't get Terry McLaurin signed, because I want you to do a little exercise at home and write out the Commanders' depth chart outside. Pen and paper, write it down, with and without Terry McLaurin. I'm not saying he's the best receiver in the league, but boy, does he have a lot of fucking leverage. Because, Samuel, McCaffrey, Noah Brown, that ain't exactly maximizing your rookie deal window for a quarterback who I think is special, right? And when you think about special young quarterback, you want to do everything you can to maximize that window when he's on his rookie deal. And so you got to hope that you've got a rookie that shakes out. And maybe the fact that they're drawing this thing out means that they really like somebody that we don't know much about yet. Like maybe who is it? What's the rookie's name? Lane?
Jalen Lane, yeah, from Tech.
Jalen Lane. I doubt it though. I think this is one of those situations where you're going to look a lot different without McLaurin. And here's the bottom line is like, what are the most important differentiating skill sets that Jayden Daniels has? He obviously has them between the ears. He can run, but I think the touch and the placement and the arm strength on the outside the numbers throws, it's as rare gets when you look around the league. Like, go back to that Bengals game. Now, I know everybody shredded the Bengals. It's not always who it's against, but it's the quality of the throw. That throw looks beautiful no matter who's playing defense. Those throws he made to McLaurin in that game look beautiful. It's just the first game, on top of my mind, he made a lot of throws like that last year. But if you don't have McLaurin, you can't access every area of the field. You're kind of leaving one of his biggest strengths on the table. And so McLaurin has a lot of leverage. I think the Debo addition is huge, right? Like, I think it kind of factors in the run game as well. Okay, you talk about how much this team runs inside zone, not so much outside zone. And part of that is personnel. I wouldn't exactly press the perimeter with Brian Robinson. And honestly, Eckler at this stage in his career, he's a really good depth piece behind him. He can catch the ball in the backfield. But you can get Debo involved in the run game, 100%. And if Debo starts catching jet sweeps, and little gadget plays that do more to occupy the eyes of edge defenders, man, like they won the wild card round on a QB pull. You remember that was a very key down, high red, trying to ice the game. And Jayden Daniels' legs does it. I mean, and the edge defender is like, what the fuck? I mean, it's almost unfair. I played in those situations, and that mesh can get really drawn out. And as you work down the line, like if you're out leveraged by Jayden Daniels, you're fucked. So you're kind of nervous as an edge defender. If you're an off-ball defender, you got a lot to look at playing this offense. They also get the ball out on the perimeter really fast, right? Like they'll get the ball out on the perimeter like that, and then it becomes part of their run game. But this is a different way to get the ball on the perimeter. And this is a different way that you can occupy eyes up front and on the second level is with Deebo Samuel flying across the formation, whether he's going to get the ball or not. He poses a unique threat. And so for players that are already predisposed thinking about the quarterback, man, I think they got a lot going for them offensively this year. And I do believe in this quarterback. The defense, I have some concerns. I'm not saying that they're going to be like bottom 5 in the league. I'm a big Dan Quinn fan. I think Joe Witt Jr. did a great job. It's basically the Dallas system, right? They're going to manufacture some pressure. They've got some sim pressures lined up. They're a challenging group to face in protection. Luvu is a stud. That guy walking around patrolling, he had one of the better years of any of the linebackers out there last year. And you line him up next to Bobby Wagner, who's got the smarts and the ability still. He's 35 years old. I think that's a little bit of my concern is like, how many more years can somebody play at a high level at 35 playing in the box like that? Like, he's definitely an outlier. I mean, but he's a Hall of Famer. So maybe it's what you expect when it comes to a Hall of Famer. But 35, man, like there's a couple guys on this team. I mentioned sneaky oldest team in the league, right? On defense, Wagner's 35. Lattimore hasn't played in all his games the past couple years. Everybody knows that. There's been some injuries. And honestly, when he got there last year, performance was up and down a little bit. Von Miller, new addition that you're going to hope that you strike gold on, but you need him to stay healthy, and he's older. Boy, he looked great at the Sack Summit. He was out there in Vegas, man. The guy looks like fucking Von Miller to me. But Von Miller's 36 years old, had injuries the past couple of years. There are just some guys on his defense that I kind of look around and I say, like, hey, there are some variable situations based on the health of this defense. Also, like the additions of guys like Dietrich Wise. I liked Dorrance Armstrong last year. They're big edge-setting guys. Like, they're guys that I respect. They're guys that play. They can play 3 downs for you, but they're not like pass rushing demons, right? They got to replace some. They've got to replace some production outside. Yep. And those guys don't exactly affect the ceiling the way you'd like them to, but the floor is high, right? They added Kinlaw on a big deal. Javon Kinlaw, who did not have a great stint in San Francisco, seemed to get a lot better in New York. And I'm not saying he can't get better and turn his career around at all. Some people are shocked by that deal. Some people question the deal. What it makes me think about is Newton, the second-year defensive tackle from Illinois, Jazon Newton. Is he not in good standing in the building? Do they not think he can quite handle a starting interior player load? Do they not think he's where he needs to be in his development? Like, to take a big swing on a guy like Kinlaw, you wonder if maybe they think they're a little bit behind with him. Let's let that play out. I don't know. And Kinlaw might be a real force. Maybe Dan Quinn and them and Adam Peters see something that most of the football fans don't see. And maybe football fans, and this is something we do often, we get too caught up in the first impression, right? And the player might actually be pretty fucking good. That's what development's for. You know, it's so funny. It's, you know, we completely discount development in the NFL. Maybe this guy's developed. I also think the Eddie Goldman thing's a nice story. He's a DC kid. He's coming back. He's going to fill in and be a depth piece there. The secondary, man, I think the big, you know, swing player or guy that everything hinges on is the kid from Ole Miss, Trey Amos. If the Trey Amos kid can play outside, then you got a lot of positional flexibility. Mike Sanderstill, one of our favorite rookies last year, if he can play inside, that'd be great. If Lattimore can stay healthy and play the other corner, that'd be great in base downs. But John Jones brought in great depth, veteran depth. He was like a damn vet when I was with him, when I think he was a rookie out of Auburn in New England, 2016, when we won a Super Bowl. That guy was like a seasoned veteran, and now he's actually a vet. I'm sure his presence is going to be great in that room. Again, the guy to watch, Trey Amos, and a solid safety group in Will Harris and Quan Martin. You like that group. You like that.
Martin's still developing, but you know, I don't think we've seen his best ball yet. I think there's more there. I think he'd be a plus player for them in the back end.
We got to talk about the Cowboys here. They hired in-house with Schottenheimer. You know, Schotty's a guy who I had offensive coordinator in St. Louis. He actually pointed out, and I didn't realize this about him, he pointed this out. He said, when I've been an offensive coordinator, we have led the league in rushing twice, which is pretty good. I think that's worth bragging about. And I think it's also that's also an insight into what they want to be, right? Like, I'm not crazy about the running back room. I don't think like anything jumps out at me. Javonte Williams is a guy I've been waiting to see get back to his rookie season kind of form. Like, we were big fans of Javonte Williams. He's had some injuries, that sort of thing. He's bounced around. But Miles Sanders, also another guy who's trying to get back to form, like 2022 Philly form. Well, he's not running behind a Philly offensive line, but I will tell you, they've got a couple decent players up front here. Like, it's not a bad group if Guyton can get back healthy and take the jump. Tyler Guyton's a guy who got hurt, and for a couple of days we were worried that he was going to be out for a long time. Cowboys fans were. He might be back week 1. It's a knee. They were talking a lot about the offseason he's had, working with Tyron Smith, you know, changing his diet, all the things that in a vacuum don't mean anything, but when you hear enough of them, you're like, maybe he's taking his job pretty seriously. And at the very least, he's working his ass off. You know, that's the word that's coming out of Dallas. And so I think he's primed to take the jump, but it's really hard when you miss camp. really hard when you miss camp. So behind the eight ball a little bit already with an injury there. The guards, Tyler Smith, Tyler Booker. Tyler Smith's one of the guys, man. When you talk about interior play over the next 5, 7, 10 years in the NFL, like he's going to be one of those guys that we mention every year. And Cooper Beebe had a solid rookie season. The problem for me is at right tackle is Terrence Steele. Terrence Steele is a physical player. Like he, got a lot of respect for the way he plays the game, but like in pass pro, he's going to have some struggles. And they're used to that. They're used to that for sure. I think play action pass is going to be a big part of this equation. It's got to be. Schottenheimer talks about marrying the run and the pass, making everything look the same. Talks about cut splits. He talks about shifts and motion. So we'll see. We'll see what the scheme looks like. But the nuts and bolts are like this. If this team can't run the football, they're going to be pretty one-dimensional. And that might work because they've got some studs outside in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And if they can get close to realizing George Pickens' potential and keeping him, consistent and happy, which is a big F, right? Like to this point in his career, I haven't been crazy about all the antics. I know that, I'm being one of those guys, but like I don't think in every situation he showed great effort or composure, that sort of thing. But I'm also a big fan of George Pickens and his ceiling. I said something a year or two ago where I said he's got Hall of Fame talent, and people laughed at me. Maybe they didn't listen to the wording. I said talent. He has Hall of Fame talent in his body. And when you look at him tracking a football, going up and high pointing a ball, contorting his body on the sideline, he's got that special ability. And maybe playing with a guy like Dak Prescott will bring it out of him. I think we disrespect Dak Prescott a lot in this league. As fans, it's easy being a former Eagle and having a podcast where a lot of the listeners are probably Eagles fans. Like Dak Prescott is a good football player. All right. He's somebody I respect. Have they performed in the playoffs? No, but it ain't just Dak Prescott. So I'd like to see them marry, as Schottenheimer pointed out, the run game, the run looks with the pass game, get the play action going, like their tight end group. Really like the tight end group. The way Schotty talks, it all hinges on the run game. So we'll see if this group can be physical. But I look back to situations like last year when they played Seattle and put up like 50 points in that game. It was an absolute shootout. I see this group being able to throw the ball around the yard a little bit. And if Tolbert can be consistent, because that's the word coming out of camp, that consistency has been the key here. They've got a really, really nice group. And Turpin, who I haven't even mentioned yet, I'm really excited they started to use him in football situations, not just special teams, because I don't think he's just a gadget guy. I mean, they use him for gadgets, but a guy with ability like that, you'd love to see him getting some snaps outside and at least making defenses prepare for his speed. Because when he's on the field and you can actually say, hey, we're going to see him in some base downs, we're going to see him getting targets, it really does it stresses defenses out thinking about a guy who can really run like that, knowing that he's going to have access to the second level of defense. So the defense, man, like another new coordinator situation with Eberflus. And I've always said this, Eberflus is a good coordinator. Brandon Staley's a guy who we're going to see pop up in New Orleans this year. Like I'm interested to see how he does down there, because you think about like the disgraced head coach kind of thing. When it's a defensive head coach, there's still hope, man. You can go back to your bread and butter and get back to doing what you do best. And like Eberflus is one of those guys for me where, and you pointed this out, Nolan, when they acquired Montez Sweat a couple years ago, my ears are running together here, but like that looked like one of the best defenses in football. He really had those guys humming. His problem wasn't coaching defense. His problem was coaching a football team. And so I'm excited to see him get another shot. You talked about them playing Tampa 2 in the past. I don't think the linebacker room is supportive of being able to do that. But they're going to run a 4-3, split safety looks. The guys up front, man, it kind of mirrors the offensive issues for me. As like the question is, can you run the football? On defense, the question has been, and it feels like for a while now, can Dallas stop the run? And that Mozzie Smith pick is like, it's kind of one that's like, it's teetering on being a one that they're going to pay for here because they got him with a 1. He hasn't quite come along yet. It's early in his career, but like from what I saw early on, if you draft a big run stuffing kind of guy, your defense has to improve in that category. You're not asking that guy to go get 10 sacks, but they just did not seem like a physical football team up front. And even the good players like Odigizua, who just got paid, deservedly so, really good rusher, he's not exactly your Dexter Lawrence type guy. So by that I mean he's not got the heft that some of those big zeros, those big hefty have. And so, as a group, they're a little bit light in the ass, and where they're not light in the ass, they're unproven. And so I would like to see, I don't know if I'd like to see it, but it would benefit them to stop the run because then you can get to third down. And then you can see Parsons and Fowler if Parsons is on this football team, which I personally think, and this goes back, it's like the Terry McLaurin conversation. I personally think that Micah Parsons is going to be on a different team soon. That's just me. Jerry can say whatever he wants to say. I just have a feeling that at the very least he's being shopped right now. That's how I feel. And so we'll see what happens there. There's a bunch of second rounders. Donovan, I can't even say the guy's last name. You want to help me with this one?
Ezeraku,
second rounder. He's a depth
Boston
guy
College.
outside for them. Marshawn Nealon, Sam Williams. You remember those names over the past couple of years. They were relatively high draft picks. Sam Williams is a guy that, like, man, he used to run down and be a gunner on punt team. I'm waiting for him to have his big base defense year. Marshawn Nealon, they have invested in that group. But DeMarcus Lawrence, like, that's a big loss, man. DeMarcus Lawrence from a leadership standpoint, DeMarcus Lawrence from a play standpoint in the run game, in the pass game. I just want to take a second, tip my cap to DeMarcus Lawrence, one of the best complete players of our generation, just a total stud. There is a world where Micah Parsons is not on this team, and you've got that linebacking core, and you can't stop the run. Really, at that point, whatever's happening in the secondary doesn't matter, but I'll read. Let me read you what's happening in the secondary. Honestly, kind of a shit show. And this isn't me with my, like, Dallas Cowboy hater glasses on. I know I just skewered them the other night talking about Micah Parsons, but, like, this defense last year when they played Tampa Bay late in the season, I was like, man, if they would play like that, that'd be a scary fucking group.
Yeah.
So, they've got some dudes. I love the safeties, Wilson, Hooker, Bell, good players. Diggs obviously is Diggs, but he's coming off a knee injury. I don't know when he's returning. Bland has been forced into playing some slot this offseason, as Nolan, as you pointed out. It's a contract year for him. That's probably not an exciting prospect for him to have to play out of position in a contract year. And then, you got a rookie third rounder in Siobhan Revel who's coming off an ACL, and you've got Elam who's coming off the Kansas City game. Like, there's just a lot of coming off going on. And it's kind of a shit show. When you when you look at this when you look at this defensive backfield, it's just looking at this whole group. It's the variability is crazy to me. And I don't know if there's a version of this defense that's a top 5 defense. But I see a version that's bottom 10 if things don't work out in certain spots. So, listen, this might be one of those teams that has to score like 40 points to win, which is unfair to Dak Prescott. And, organizations are perfectly designed for their outcomes. And the outcome might be that this team can't outscore everybody. I could have this defense misread, and it might end up being a good group. But on paper, there's some concerns for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's like the offensive side of the ball, like you were saying, Chris, the run game, it's It almost feels like it's going to set their ceiling, knowing that's what they want to do. But defensively, with what's looking like, it could be tough sledding for them to defend the run. That floor could be pretty low.
No question. So plenty of drama in Dallas already this offseason. I also think worth noting, brutal schedule out of the bye. I think they have a Week 10 bye. They go Vegas, Philly, KC, Detroit on Thursday Night Football, Minnesota, the Chargers, Washington. That's tough. So they better get some work done early, you know?
Yep.
You know, you got to get your work done before the temperature drops. Giants, the last team in this division we're going to talk about. But honestly, bro, I'm looking forward to seeing this team play.
Yep.
If not for the fact that I don't have anything invested in them, you know, like it doesn't matter to me whether they win or lose, but I'm looking forward to seeing them play because there are some question marks at quarterback. I think Russ is going to start the season, right? If I had access to any information around there'd be a lot of things I want to know, but I'd want to go back and look at different rookies, different rookie seasons, and be privy to the plan, right? Like they don't tell you what the plan is, but a lot of times they have a plan, right? They'll start a veteran. They'll say, you know, it's all about whoever's playing the best football or yada, yada, yada. But they have an idea in their mind of where they might want to debut the rookie. And it might be based on how the veteran plays, but they might just want to go to him regardless because they know the veteran doesn't have a high ceiling. This is a veteran that, you know, has had high highs in this league. And when you see him throw a moon ball, sometimes you think he might be the same guy. But in Pittsburgh last year, it started to fizzle. And I think they know the ceiling's not as high as it once was. The group around him isn't as good as, you know, a group that could carry a 35-year-old Russell Wilson or whatever it is. Like at some point they might be turning the page this year. And hey, Jameis Winston our guy Jameis might see the field. But Jackson Dart, who by all accounts is impressed in training camp, at least the things I've heard, who they spent a high pick on, he could change the fortunes of everybody in this building. If I'm Joe Shane and Brian Dable, however people are saying it this year, and you got a plan, just don't include in the plan Jackson Dart takes the field weeks 6, 7, or 8. Because in those weeks, the New York Football Giants play the Philadelphia Eagles, the Denver Broncos, and the Philadelphia Eagles. That is now again, it's a brand new season, as we pointed out with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like their defense might not be as good, but that is a shit sandwich right there. And that is where you don't roll out a rookie quarterback because he might decide he don't want to play football anymore. He might decide he don't want to play. It might feel like that video of him throwing to a jet ski, it might feel like he got run over by a jet ski playing against those defenses. So don't do it. Maybe the soft spot in the schedule is after week 8. When is their bye?
Week 14. Woof.
Yikes.
Long way off.
That's a terrible bye.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what the fuck are they doing? Jeez. But listen, this is year 4 for Dayball. This is year 4 for Joe Shane. I think Joe Shane has gotten a lot of shit. I'm brave guy take here. And I've said this before. I don't think they are to blame for how the end of Saquon's career in New York went. Look what they did for Saquon by letting him go. Right? Like not entrapping him in New York. Like what do you want them to do? Pay Saquon? What would have happened last year to Saquon Barkley running behind that line? Right? I don't think they had much of a choice. And I actually think, and this is what's kind of swaying me on Joe Shane, is like last year's rookie class was really good. Awesome. It was really good. Tracy, Johnson, Neighbors, Newbin, Phillips. These are all guys that are playing snaps.
Yep.
They're all playing snaps. And some of them people are really excited about. Tyrone Tracy had 1,000 yards. Johnson, if not for Liz Frank, people are all jacked up about him, tight end. Malik Neighbors might be one of the best players in the game in 5 years. Okay, so like he might be one of the best players in the game now. He just don't have anybody throw him the ball, dude. He's that type of guy. Him and the guy in Jacksonville are fucking studs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to pump the brakes for a second on the Shane hate, and I also think worth noting, I don't think Dayball ever liked Daniel Jones. I think this is one of those situations where, bro, there's a fucking hilarious video of a guy in an elevator, and he walks on the elevator, and there's some like women on the elevator, and they're like, he's got like a loud shirt on, and they're like, "Who the fuck are you?" And he goes, "Who the fuck are you?" He goes, "I'm the guy that just divorced his wife of 25 years. Who are you?" And he was just riding a high. He was like, "I'm finally free." That's how I feel like Brian Daboll feels right now getting off the elevator in New York, because he finally has at least some say in who's going to be the quarterback for him. And that guy is either Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Jackson Dart. And if you think about, probability, there might be a good quarterback in there somewhere, and it might be Jackson Dart. And if it's Jackson Dart, he might have new life. This whole regime might have new life, because I personally don't think Brian's a bad coach. So I'd like to see him have a quarterback of his choice, of his choosing, of his preference. And if we can do that, let's start with the defense. Okay? We'll get back to the offense, because we can talk about what needs to happen around that quarterback, but this is the reason I really want to watch this team play. They might have the best NASCAR package in football. NASCAR package is when you put your 4 best rushers on the field, because a lot of people are going to say NASCAR is just defensive ends. Okay. Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys. So that NASCAR package looks like Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Burns, and Lawrence. Okay. By the way, Dexter Lawrence, per Pro Football Focus, 96 pressures at 0 no's, compared to the second highest player over the last 3 years with 20. Bro, he is a one-man wrecking crew. You should hear people talk about him that have had to play him. You should hear Jason Kelsey talk about Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence makes Pro Bowl players look drunk out there, powerless. He makes them look, I mean, he had like Cam Jurgens in a baby Bjorn last year at one point. Like, it's crazy, dude. Like, sometimes it just looks like he's moving furniture out there, dude.
Yeah.
So
it's
just realize, starting with him, it is hell when you're preparing. And also a St. Louis Memorial Award to whoever has to play center in camp opposite him, right? Is it John Michael Schmitz?
Yep, JMS.
JMS. What an unfortunate name. Sounds like a guy on a Candyland board or something. Like, it just doesn't sound like a fucking football player. But that poor bastard, every fucking August morning, his alarm clock goes off. I know this is a preview, but this is the first guy that I'm spending like 5 minutes just riffing on. Every morning when JMS's alarm clock goes off, you know how we check our phones, and like you might check Twitter if you're like that, or you might like check your text messages, or you might be thinking, like, he's thinking about Dexter Lawrence, bro. And sometimes I'm sure if it's a morning practice, like the alarm clock goes off and he's like, God, I got 2 hours until I'm getting moved around like furniture, bro. You got to realize, like, in training camp, you want to look good on tape. And it's one thing to play a guy in joint practice or play a guy on Sunday and be like, God damn, dude, until next year, every day he walks off the fucking field and he's like, I'll see him again in the morning. So that's got to be tough. And Abdul Carter seems to be I mean, I've seen a couple clips of the guy. They're just clips. They're just training camp clips. But the ankle flexion, Nolan sent me a screen grab, and he knows how I am about ankle flexion. Nolan sent me a screen grab of this guy's fucking ankle. It looks like it's broken. Okay.
Yeah.
If you'd have showed me that, if my ankle did that, I'd be in a fucking boot. I'd be in an air cast, dude.
Mhm.
They'd be giving me morphine and holding my hand and putting me on a stretcher. This guy's ankle turned sideways.
His shin was parallel to the ground, and his heel spikes were dug in. It didn't look real.
Which for people watching is, in my opinion, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, predictor of pass rusher success. The ankle flexion, the dorsiflexion, whatever you want to call it. You know, I could tell you from experience in my career, my best year, I was shooting up my ankle, playing through a high ankle sprain, shooting into the joint, not advisable, but needed to get that moolah, needed to get that bag. You know, it was contract year. You know, some people might be like, man, Chris wasn't the same since he got paid. Like, he just didn't want it. No, my ankle didn't work the same as it used to. We left that in 2011. We left the ankle flexion in 2011. But that's just as a pass rusher, I watch these guys, and I think Thibodeau gets way too much hate, dude. Way too much hate for his production. Now, I'm not saying that he's all world, but he can be a good piece on this front. And if you're talking about Brian Burns, Tib, Carter, Lawrence, that's a tough group to deal with. And I would imagine that Thibodeau, who has been reported to have he's looking bigger, right? Also, something interesting about what he's doing this offseason, I saw he was training as like a wrestler. Like he was training on like shooting and takedowns, which honestly, he said he missed a lot of sacks. I know what that's like. Not a bad idea, dude. So at the very least, he's being intentional about the way he's going about his business. And if he has gained weight, that might be in preparation to be the guy on third down that kicks inside to accommodate this fucking phenom in Carter, who I've seen go inside. He was a floater in practice, no pads. Inside swim in a guard, sunk a rip, then spun back outside. And the guard didn't know what the fuck was going on, dude. No, it's no pads. It's training camp. He's probably going against God knows who. But this kid looks special. Special alert, Abdul Carter. Just get ready, dude. Just get ready to see this front. Now, I don't know what's going to happen outside the front. I like Micah McFadden. I like Okereke. I like Holland. I like Newbin, who had a really good rookie year, had an ankle injury. You know, the corner spot, not as, I mean, with Banks and Flock competing for spot 2, like there will be holes.
Yep.
But Adebo gives him a veteran starter at one spot. Drew Phillips good in the slot. Like, this has got a chance to be kind of a sexy defense, man.
No doubt.
I mean, a defense you want to see play. Bowen was solid in his first year, varied the fronts, right? Blitzed a good bit. Might not have to.
Right.
Like, this might be one of those groups that can just be like, hey, we're rushing these 4 sons of bitches, and we're going to play coverage behind it, and you got to figure out how to block them. So,
and as far as the mentality of this defense, there's a great quote from Shane Bowen. A point of emphasis for them is taking the ball away in 2025. And the way he's drilling that into the guys' heads, he said, You'll hear our guys say it. I say it ad nauseum. Be a damn pirate.
That's what they're going to be this season. Pirate. I kind of like that, bro. Because, you know, if I were to say, what did pirates used to do? And I asked that to ChatGPT or Google. Pirates engaged in a variety of activities, most notably attacking ships to steal cargo, which included valuable goods like spices, cloth, and even the ship itself. They also sometimes took passengers and crew for ransom. Beyond theft, pirates also engaged in illegal trade and smuggling, and some even acted as a form of local governance, collecting taxes and offering protection to coastal communities, according to Wikipedia. Pirates were like the maritime mafia, dude. you didn't want to accept protection from the Pirates because then all of a sudden you owed the Pirates. So it kind of raiding and plunder, that's what they're known for. Yeah, I kind of like this, Shane Bowen. I kind of like this.
The New York Pirates.
More of the pillaging and not the other thing, though. So I'm all about. I am all about this defense, bro. I am. I got to call it how I see it. Now back to that offense, which is going to be like a supporting actor in this case. Like the lead actor in this movie is the defense, and so if they can play low-scoring games, if they can create turnovers, like they can muddy things up. You know what I might be. A couple years ago, I had this take, and I've had some good ass takes now. But I had this take that didn't really last very long. It was like week 1, the Giants played somebody really tough, and I was like, "Are the Giants the new Titans?" Maybe we're a little late, but they could be a muddy it up type team this year. They look like the type of team that would win some Vrabel spots, dude. If they can figure it out at quarterback, if they can find a way to get this offensive line to play together, right? Like Andrew Thomas, who's turned into a really good player at left tackle, Illuminor's at right tackle. We talked
contract
about
year.
Yep, John Michael Schmidt at center.
Schmitz.
Yep. The guards are fine, right? Evan Neal's going to get a chance to at least compete for a guard spot, which I'm excited for him. Like, listen, sometimes they draft you at the wrong fucking position. That ain't your fault, right? Like the entire they hate Neal so much in New York that I see him on these like fake headlines. Like you see, we've all seen this post. Evan Neal on the Epstein list. Like it's like a fake post. It's like they hate this guy, dude. And if you think about it, it's crazy to me because Evan Neal doesn't say, "Hey, I'd like to be taken. I'm one of the best 5-10 players in the draft." Number one, you decide that as GM and ownership. So like number one, that's not Evan Neal's fault that you thought he was that good. Number two, Evan Neal didn't say like, "Hey, I can play tackle." I mean, I'm sure he said it I'm sure he said it in meetings leading up to the draft, but it's not like he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be an all-world tackle." I think there's a lot of players that get drafted out of position, and maybe he's one of them. They also famously had the Andrew Thomas situation where everybody was calling him a bust, and he turned out to be one of the better tackles in the league. So, hope is not all gone for Evan Neal. And hopefully people can give him some grace if he moves to guard, and maybe he'll be off the Epstein list.
Depends how he plays.
Depends how he plays. Yo, these memes are out of control that people do, dude. These fake fucking. I saw a quote the other day. It was on one of these like fan sites. It was like an Eagles fan site, even. And it had like just a totally fake Miles Sanders quote up there. Like it had like a completely fake Miles Sanders quote. It was like, "Yeah, I'm real happy to get to play in Dallas because I get to go against that punk ass Saquon Barkley twice a year. I hate that guy. Like, he's a real piece of shit." Even though they're like boys because of Penn State, I guess.
Yep.
And like all the comments are like, "I can't believe he said that." The population is getting so dumb. You can say whatever, and especially to emotional football fans, and it might stick. So, anyways, in summation, I hope Evan Neal plays well at guard because I hate the fact that his name's been dragged through the mud. Plus, the list doesn't exist. Probably deleted itself. Probably never existed. We should move on as a country. So that's the NFC East. I will tell you the way I see it shaking out when we do our big like roundup pod. Expect some more of these previews to be floating around on our YouTube here. But that's the NFC East for you.